The Qataris, since the mid-90s, have been sponsoring radicals. They have been inciting people. They have become a base for the leadership for the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to keep in mind, is what begot us Takfir and Hijrah, which begot us al-Qaeda, which begot us al-Nusra. There's a list of terror financiers that the US puts out, the UN puts out, and a number of them are living openly in Qatar, raising money and giving it to bad people. Is this acceptable? Shouldn't be. Why do the Qataris get away with it?
Let's watch the Saudi foreign minister talk about Qatar's influence in the region. All right, let's check that out.
Say a few words about the falling out on the one hand of the Saudi Arabia and the UAE on the one hand and Qatar on the other. Are you moving toward a resolution of that situation?
It's not a falling out. It's just we don't want to have anything to do with them. The Qataris, since the mid-90s, have been sponsoring radicals. They have been inciting people. They have become a base for the leadership for the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to keep in mind, is what begot us Takfir and Hijrah, which begot us al-Qaeda, which begot us al-Nusra. The Qataris allow their senior religious clerics to go on television and justify suicide bombings. That's not acceptable. The Qataris harbor and shelter terrorists. That's not acceptable. And Nashri, the head of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in 2000, entered Saudi Arabia on a Qatari passport. We captured al-Qaeda types coming into Saudi Arabia with Qatari passports. The Qataris know this. The Americans know this. The world knows this. The Qataris are funding dissidents in the Emirates and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait in order to cause problems for those governments and to create instability. Why would you do this? The Qataris pay ransom to terrorist groups, including $500 million to Hezbollah in Iraq, $50 million to Qasem Soleimani, according to text messages between the Qatari ambassador in Iraq and the foreign minister of Iraq, including I don't know how much to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Is that acceptable? If we gave $1 to Hezbollah in Iraq, we'd be sued in a court down the street. And so the Qataris use their media platforms to spread hate. The Qataris send weapons to al-Qaeda affiliated militias in Libya. The Qatari Emir was conniving with Gaddafi on how to overthrow Saudi Arabia. The Qataris connected Gaddafi with a Saudi dissident in London who they fund, who connected the Libyans with a group in Mecca with the objective of assassinating the then Crown Prince, later King of Saudi Arabia. Is this acceptable? We have phone conversation that the Libyans gave us after they overthrew Gaddafi, where the then Emir of Qatar is telling Gaddafi how he's recruiting princes and tribal leaders and military officers and members of the royal family to cause mischief and destabilize Saudi Arabia, and predicted that within 10 years there would be no royal family in Saudi Arabia. Is this acceptable? They do the same thing in Bahrain and in Kuwait and in the Emirates. So in 2012, we cut off relations with them, the same countries. And a year later, they came back and agreed that they will end all of this nonsense. And they signed an agreement. And nothing happened. So this time, we said, you know what? We're not going to deal with you. Unless you change. We will not allow you. There's a list of terror financiers that the US puts out, the UN puts out, and a number of them are living openly in Qatar, raising money and giving it to bad people. Is this acceptable? Shouldn't be. Why do the Qataris get away with it? Because I think people see a young country, young leadership, they buy fancy buildings, they have a nice airline, and they think, wow, these guys are really modern. But we have to deal with the dark side. that I just explained. And so that's why we said, unless you change, we're not going to deal with you. Now, what happened since we took this action? They signed an MOU with the US on terror financing that they had refused to sign before. They changed their laws to allow the introduction of evidence provided by a foreign government. They reduced their support for Hamas, which opened the door for reconciliation among the Palestinians. All of these are good things. Now we're waiting for them to continue to implement all the things that they promised to implement. They refused to engage in a dialogue about implementing these issues, and we refused to talk to them. And so for us, and we've said this to them, we've taken the steps that we took. No dealing with Qatar. You can't overfly airspace. You can't import things from our market. We will not, the military cooperation is still ongoing because that's a GCC issue, and with the US, so we do that. But the other stuff is all frozen until they change. And I hope they change. And if they don't change, we're patient people. We'll wait for 10, 15, 20 years, 50 years. How long did it take you with Castro in Cuba? We can do the same with Qatar. We'll have no issue. It would be nice of them if they acknowledge that they have a problem, and then they can fix the problem. And the problem with the Qataris is they're still in denial. And we need to move them from denial to introspection so they can fix the problem. We have no hostility towards Qatar. We just vehemently oppose their behavior, which is very dangerous to us and has endangered our citizens and has endangered our security. And that's why we took the steps we took.
Okay, so, all right. So on the one hand, I thought that the Saudi foreign minister spoke very well, very clear. I think the stuff that he said against Qatar is totally true. Everything that he said is true. And I think he's right that it is a rogue country, a jihadist country that supports the worst elements in the Middle East, that supports the kind of jihadism that bites the whole Middle East and undermines progress in the whole region. And so I was, like you watch this and you're like, wow, these guys get it, and we're moving towards reconciliation with the Saudis because the Saudis understand the problem with Qatar and the problem with Iran. And both of those entities would love to see the destruction of Saudi Arabia. And you could see that there could be a regional alignment here, just like with the UAE, that there could be Israel could be part of the Middle East Abrahamic regional bloc. And there could be a great moment of reconciliation, normalization with Israel and the Saudis because we share so much anti-jihadism, fighting against Qatar and Iran, fighting against any kind of power that they may have in the region, and fighting their proxies that they empower regionally here. So on the one hand, it's like very exciting. On the other hand, I see this foreign minister speaking and I think to myself, what a bunch of two-facedness. What a bunch of two-facedness. When it comes to our war against Hamas and against Qatar, immediately they say, oh yeah, Israel's inflicting a genocide. Israel has to calm down. Israel has to recognize two-state solution. You know what I mean? Like, why don't you recognize a two-state solution? Give up your land to the Qataris or the Iranians. Why don't you give up Mecca and Medina to Iran? Of course they won't, right? So the two-facedness and the return to that thing that bridges so many Middle East Arabs together, which is the hate they harbor for Israel. Like all the anti-Qatar stuff just goes away when it comes to funding Hamas and the Al Jazeera that's against Saudi Arabia is also against Israel all the time. Like that, they'll let it slide. Instead of teaming up with Israel and moving forward with this Abraham Accords, let's go already. You want progress or you don't want progress? You want a normalized region? Who's going to fight Qatar? If you would give your blessings to Israel to fight Qatar, Israel would fight Qatar. Okay? but because you keep at arm's length and you don't want to team up with the Jews because of your Arab Muslim pride, because you really hate Jews religiously and historically, because of that, this is a two-faced moment. And so very eloquent, very correct against Qatar, but he doesn't want to take the big step, which is to team up with Israel to fight regional jihadis and to recognize Israel as a true partner in the Abrahamic region. And instead, I saw horrible tweets against Israel, and also at the UN, they act against Israel. Saudi Arabia, you're so, you're big and you're elegant and all that kind of stuff, and you know how to make a big party for Trump. But when it comes to real regional progress, okay, you haven't taken the steps. You still harbor the hate. And therefore, in the end, because you harbor the hate against Israel, in the end, you're empowering the very jihad that wants to strike at you first. Because we all know that the jihadis hate the Saudis. They want to take over Mecca and Medina. The Iranians despise the Saudis more than they despise the Jews. And the Qataris despise the Saudis. And the Saudis don't want to team up with Israel and the Jews because of their hate. Well, guess what? You're going to succumb to that jihadism. Okay? And you have not taken the step forward. It's time for you to wisen up. Wise up, Saudi Arabia. Look at your regional interests. Look at who your true partners could be. And you know what? Just like you said, we are also a patient people. We are patient, the Jewish people. We are patient. We have patience for 3,700 years. We're very patient. You don't want to make a deal with us. You don't want the Abraham Accords with us. Don't worry. There will be a time when the Arabs will come to their senses and they'll realize that these jihadist elements and the old Arab corrupt leaderships, they're all here to destroy the region, to pillage and rape the region. And says Chokemeister says, I would lump the Turks in with the Qataris also. Some people disagree with that. I don't know. I don't know about it's true that the Turks are oftentimes our enemies of Israel and certainly seek to create disruption and instability here in Israel. The bottom line, though, in this video, you spoke elegantly, Saudi Arabia. You are identifying the enemy, but because you can't get over your own personal hate, you're actually not going to make headway. You still have a problem with the Jews instead of realizing that we're part of an Abrahamic brotherhood and Israel's here to stay. Stop trying to shrink Israel, Saudi Arabia. Stop voting against us in the UN, Saudi Arabia. Stop supporting jihadism tacitly, because that jihadism is going to explode in your face because you weren't willing to tackle it all the way because you continue to harbor hate against Israel.